Welcome everybody to the Northeast Region RAC. We will start off with the opening statement here. Welcome to Northeast Region Regional Advisory Council meeting. This meeting will be held in person at the Northeast Region office, as well as being streamed live on YouTube. This is a public forum, allows you to express your opinions and ideas on wildlife management in our state. This RAC considers your feedback on proposals before us today and reports them to the Wildlife Board. The Wildlife Board, not the RAC, is in charge with setting the wildlife policy for our state. Wildlife management is complex. Sometimes it is emotionally charged. We all have ideas and opinions about what is best for Utah's wildlife. It's why we're here, and that's a good thing. We encourage those who want to express their opinion at today's meeting to fill out a comment card. They're out in the hallway, I believe is where they are, the green cards. We expect those in attendance to respect the people who speak, especially those who hold views that don't align with their own. Respectful behavior helps facilitate efficient meetings where RAC members can listen, digest, and address the concerns, ideas, and proposals being presented for consideration. Disrespectful behavior includes booing, yelling, cheering, or laughing while someone is speaking. You can also help maintain a respectful space by referring to people by name instead of descriptors of their physical characteristics, demeanor, or gender. If this behavior occurs, the RAC chair will remind attendees to be respectful. If their behavior continues, the applicable individual or individuals will be asked to leave. Lastly, please help reduce distractions during the meeting by putting your phone on silent. And if you need to take a call, we ask you to step outside. We'll start with the RAC introductions after that. I am Grizzling, RAC chair, represent Sportsman's. Let's start with Jordan.
Jordan McMahon of Bureau of Land Management.
Go down the line. Go ahead.
Natasha Haddon, U.S. Forest Service.
Richard Bueller, Public at Large.
Eric Major, representing the public.
Rebecca Jones, non-consumptive wildlife users.
And Jake Huber will be joining us here shortly online as well. So we'll wait for when he gets on. We'll have a full quorum, I believe. And go ahead and have Dallin introduce himself. So
I'm Dallin Christensen. I'm the regional wildlife manager, stepping in for Miles Hanberg, who couldn't make it tonight.
it's like nobody could make it tonight. So okay, we will go ahead and start off the next agenda item. Well, I'll go ahead and read the approval for the board. Maybe Jake will be on and then we'll go over the approval of the minutes. For the last board meeting was May 1st, 2025 at the Farmington Bay at the Eccles Wildlife Center. And see here, the first motion was the first motion made was to move to ask that we ask the division to look at the use of aerial equipment for hunting and retrieval of game. This to be placed on the action log, and that passed unanimously. The next motion was moved to approve the recommendations for the taking of big game rule as R657-5 as presented by the division, and that one passed unanimously. The next motion was moved that they approve the deer permit recommendations presented with the Beaver West reduction as amended by the division. Before that meeting, the wildlife biologists had gotten together and they'd actually dropped that number down in the recommendation. Anyhow, that was passed unanimously. Then the next motion was moved to ask the division to look at producers of how to contact and notify hunters when a hunt is available due to lone sheep disease outbreak. And that was to be added to the action log, and that passed unanimously. That was basically if a bighorn sheep wandered out of the unit, that they can call on a hunter to take that unit out of there so that sheep doesn't go out and get disease and bring it back, kind of a thing is kind of the purpose behind that action log. The next one is move that we accept the once in a lifetime permit recommendations as presented, and that passed unanimously. The next one was accept the bull elk recommendations, that passed unanimously. And next one was to move to accept the antelope pronghorn permit recommendations, that passed unanimously. Then the next one was the antlerless permit recommendations, accept that as presented and it passed unanimously. The next was the move to approve the 2025 CWMU antlerless permit recommendations. And that one passed 4 in favor and 1 recusal. The next was to motion to move that the division look into private landowner vouchers in relation to losing points and carrying waiting periods. The proposal is to be brought to the board as an informational item prior to the presenting it through the public RACs. And that was kind of the one that we had put through here, kind of to look at one that I think we'd voted on to the landowners would lose their preference points if they received a voucher. And that one passed unanimously. And then the next one was to approve as presented the division with the exception that they add the criteria for HB 202 tags to evaluate public benefit from it. And that one passed unanimously. And then the next one is the Expo rule amendments. And it was passed unanimously as presented. And the last one was to approve the CWMU Buck and Bull recommendations as presented. And that one also passed unanimously. Don't see. And I also forgot to introduce, looks like we have a couple, Gary Nelson is online, from the Wildlife Board, and also Randy Durst is here in person for the Wildlife Board as well too. So we'd like to welcome them and any other division folks as well too. So we'll go ahead and do the approval of the agenda minutes. Can we do that since we don't have a full quorum?
I think we can. It's not that important. Yeah. We're not supposed to vote if we don't have a full quorum. We need 6 to make a full quorum. If this is the agenda, I assume it's probably okay to do this one, as long as we're not into the meat of it. What do you think, Mr. Chairman?
Is he on his way? Do you have any idea?
I just texted him, so.
He said 10 to 15 at most. Do we want to take a 10 to 15 minute recess and wait till he
How
gets
long was
on?
your presentation?
There's,
Probably only 5.
I guess we could go on to your
We
presentation.
do that.
Okay, we'll go ahead and jump to the regional update, turn it over to Dallin. Oh, Jake's online there. Hello, Jake, go ahead and introduce yourself. You're muted there, Jake.
There we go. I was trying to unmute it. Jake Huber, sports and representative.
Okay, we appreciate getting online there. We have 6 people. We have a full quorum now, so we'll go ahead and do the approval for the agenda and the minutes. Do you have any questions on it or motion on it?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Okay,
As presented.
Natasha has a motion to accept the minutes. A second.
Second.
And Jordan seconded it. All those in favor, we'll go ahead and just do a raise of hands. Jake? Okay, there was a unanimous. Okay, now we'll turn it over to Dallin for the regional update.
All right. So, yeah, my name is Dallin Christensen. I'm the Northeast Region Wildlife Section Manager, stepping in for Miles Handberg, who couldn't be here tonight. Just have a quick update from the section for what the region for what each section has been doing. We'll start with talking about a sad. Well, we're missing a person from our front counter. Rose Fidelic. She was with us for 20 years. Many of you who have come in have received help from Rose at the front counter. Rose sadly passed away on April 27th, and she will be missed. We will miss her at the front counter, her knowledge, her laugh, her personality, and the friend that she was. We'll now go to fisheries. Our fisheries personnel, this is their busy season. I think that they're all chomping at the bit when the ice comes off to get out and get back into the field to do what they love to do. For the fisheries report, their manager reports that the bass fishing at Pelican Lake has been hot this spring. They've had a few spring tournaments down there, and it shows that the bass are doing quite well, with the winning fish at one of those tournaments being over 16 pounds. So if you're wanting to go bass fishing, maybe hit up Pelican Lake. The Flaming Gorge crew, they just finished up their spring netting efforts. They caught some beautiful fish and found that the big lake trout are eating a lot of smaller fish, including rainbow, suckerfish, kokanee, and it's a great time to go to the gorge and target the smaller lake trout. Lake Canyon cutthroat spawn is happening now. The first day, the crew caught 69 females, and they're well underway to reaching their quota for egg take for the year. And the spring stocking efforts are underway. You pass the truck a lot heading out to reservoirs here in the basin. They're stocking a lot of fish in different reservoirs, which should make for a great year of fishing. Moving on to the habitat section, this is their busy field season as well. In the region, we have around 300 guzzlers now, and we're working to install some more. And so just keeping those 300 guzzlers up and running and holding water and doing fulfilling their purpose, it takes a lot of effort. And so right now, a lot of effort's going into going out, checking the guzzlers, making sure they're working properly and fixing anything that needs repaired. Also, we're working on constructing some new guzzlers across the region, one of which is listed in there. The mega guzzler on Blue Mountain was just constructed. It's a huge water holding, has huge water holding capabilities and should be a huge benefit to wildlife on the Blue Mountain area. They've had a lot of projects going on at the Stewart Lake WMA here along the Green River, including some new fencing that's went in, some tree removal, some Russian olive removal, improvements to the parking lot and other infrastructure. They've been probably the biggest thing that they're working on right now is the Willow Creek watershed restoration, which is a huge project that involves the whole Willow Creek drainage in the Book Cliffs area. Some of the things that they'll be working on there are new seed plantings, specifically for mule deer, some stream restorations, some harrow work, some new fencing going in. And it's a huge undertaking and a huge project that's going to take a few years to complete. But we're very excited about seeing where this will go and what benefits it'll have for wildlife. And also rehab work on the Strawberry River. That's kind of been a theme in the Northeast region for the past several years since the Dollar Ridge fire, but those efforts are continuing. Our outreach section, they have a lot of upcoming events. May 19th, we'll begin fishing with the Fox. There's tagged fish in Brownie Lake, in Lower Stillwater Pond, and in Steinecker Reservoir. May 29th, there will be badgers and bobbers held at Little Monas Creek. June 6th and 7th, the Wild Bunch and Josie shoots will happen at the Buckskin Hill Shooting Range. July 7th is June 7th, is Free Fishing Day. July 12th, the Osprey Watch at Flaming Gorge. And July 19th will be the Hummingbird Banding event at the Red Canyon Lodge. So a lot of good things coming up. A lot of events that you can take your family out and have a good time. The wildlife section, we have a lot of good things going on in the region. One thing that we just started this past winter, we collared some moose on the Wasatch unit. We're looking at survival rates, parasite loads, and reproduction rates. This picture that you can see here is actually of a day-old moose calf from about a week and a half ago, just barely born. But we're excited for that survey and what it's going to tell us about the way we're managing moose and what we can do more for moose in Utah. Our deer survival rates are looking quite encouraging this spring. We've had kind of a lighter winter. Our fawn rates for the region or the unit here that we monitor fawn rates on are up from past years. Yeah, it's very encouraging. Hopefully we'll continue this trend and be able to keep those survival rates up throughout the year and see a growth in our herds. Our sage grouse leg counts for the spring have wrapped up and we're up from past years. And one effort that we've been doing the past couple of years that many people probably don't know about is our rosy finch banding efforts. And this year, our biologist over rosy finch put in a huge effort, and he banded over 1,800 rosy finch, which is a huge amount of effort. And we're already seeing some movements and things that we didn't know existed before. So our law enforcement section has been quite busy with the spring turkey and bear hunts. They've been out patrolling and doing their jobs, keeping people safe and keeping our wildlife protected. Our officers have also been quite busy with assisting other agencies with incidents that have happened across the region, and even helping with search and rescue efforts this past week, helping go out and look for someone who was lost. And with that, any questions? All right, that's the update.
Thank you, Alan. We will go ahead and jump to the item number 5, the dedicated hunter rule amendments by Brian Christensen. Do you want to give like a brief summary or
I would love to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
any updates or anything on it? Or
No updates. The thing that I've just kind of clarified in each of the different meetings is that this particular rule change often gets termed the banking concept. And in a lot of folks' minds, that means storage over time, year after year after year. And that's not what this is. It's a little different situation. So just to explain it, basically how it would work is in an application year, a person would apply for dedicated hunter, and should they happen to draw, they can find out that draw result says successful. And then what we'll do is go back to January 1st of that same year and see if they did any service through our divisions projects. And if they did, we'll merge that right into their new 3-year COR, their 3-year enrollment. And they'll have that advantage to have been able to do projects during that application year. And then if they didn't draw, then we won't look at it. It'll just be gone. It'll just be thanks for helping us out kind of thing. So it's not a year after year storage, but it does double the amount of time dedicated hunters have to do their first year. So that's my basic clarification. So
is there any questions from the RAC?
One question I had, and maybe it's more of a comment, but could you elaborate? Like, it's still encouraged to register, right? So the service hours can be tracked, whether you have someone that's not even going to be a dedicated hunter. Can you maybe talk to that?
yeah, so if the division is hosting any kind of service project, or we're a partner, we will typically put that on our webpage. And it's not just a dedicated hunter option. It's all volunteers that want to help divisional wildlife. If it's on that web page of projects, anybody can volunteer for it. We kind of hyper focus on dedicated hunters because that's the program we have for volunteerism. But we do require anybody that's going to volunteer on our projects to register. Just like if you were to buy a movie ticket or a concert ticket, you need to have that done up front so that we can, so we can get the liability stuff out of the way when they register, but also so that those service hours do go into our database system. And in some cases, the service projects may also help us with grant funding as well. And they don't all do that, but anything that has some kind of federal aid eligibility, it gives us that opportunity to use that for grant match. So yeah, we do like all of our volunteers to pre-register for that. I'm hoping that answered your comment / question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any other questions? We'll go ahead and move to any public questions. Okay, we'll go to the electronic comments.
For this agenda item, we had one comment which strongly agreed. However, they did not leave any feedback.
Okay. We do not have any public comment cards on this one. And just remind everyone, public comment cards are out there. And if you have a comment, just bring them up and we'll put them up here for any future comments. So we'll go ahead and move to the RAC comments. And I want to point out Richie Anderson has joined us as well on the RAC. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Richie?
Richie Anderson, representing agriculture.
Thank you. Okay, any RAC comments?
That's a great idea. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to accept the dedicated hunter rule amendment as presented by the Division of Wildlife.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the dedicated hunter rule amendment by Natasha as presented. Do I have a second?
I can second it.
Seconded by, lost my mind here, Eric Majors. And we'll just go ahead and take a vote by raise of hand. Looks like passed unanimously. Okay, we will
Thanks.
move on to the next one. The conservation permit program rule. And Dax Mangus is going to fill in for Kobe Jones on this one. Kobe had some, was going on fun trip with his family, it sounds like. So,
Yep. So happy to be here on this for this agenda item with you. It's pretty simple, relatively small changes. We had some discussion about season dates for bighorn sheep hunts, conservation permit bighorn sheep hunts when we went through the fall rack cycle with season dates a while back. And we're following up on the recommendations that came about through those discussions with shortening the dates for the conservation permit bighorn sheep hunts. And then the other change here has to do with a memorandum of understanding and agreement that we're working on with Antelope Island State Park to potentially allow for a little bit more public hunting opportunity on Antelope Island State Park. And the wording in the rule as it currently sits said that for every public permit, there would be a conservation permit. And we've changed that now. So we will still have the, a conservation buck deer permit, conservation bighorn sheep permit, but we could potentially have more than one deer permit and more than one sheep permit that would go to the public. So that's kind of a summary of the changes on this one.
okay. Is there any RAC questions on this item? Any public questions on it? Okay, we'll go ahead and move to electronic comments.
For this agenda item, we had no comments.
Okay, is there any public comments or is that for later on?
For a later one.
Okay, so we have no public comments on this one, so we'll go ahead and move to the RAC comments. We'll entertain a motion.
I would like to make a motion to accept the conservation permit program rule amendment as presented by the Division of Wildlife.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the conservation permit rule amendments by Natasha. Do I have a second?
Second it.
Seconded by Jordan. Okay, we'll go ahead and take a vote by raise of hand. Okay, that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
That was a quick one, Dax. Jeez, we didn't even get to beat you up. Okay, we will move on to agenda item number 7, Outfitters Guides Spotter Rule Amendments by Chad Bettridge.
I bet our streak of no questions ends here.
Do you want to, I think you had some updates.
I do, yes.
Okay, you want to go ahead and give us those updates?
Yes. Initially, when I created the video that was sent out, I just want to make sure that everybody saw it. The initial renewal date on the video was December 31st. We did adjust that video moved it from December 31st to March 31st. Just want to make sure everybody saw that the renewal date as it stands in the rule right now is March 31st each year. Secondly, after a discussion with a Forest Service employee, in section 3, the application the application requirements and approval section under 2D, it's in the rule it states all necessary federal permits to operate on federal land. And the Forest Service and BLM require the exact same thing at the same time. So it kind of would be a bottleneck and we wouldn't be able to move forward. So there's been numerous motions and other RACs, but what I am suggesting is that we adjust that phrase in D to state must obtain the proper federal land use permit and have it available in the field, is something along those lines. That way that we can continue through the process of the application process for the federal and for the state. And finally, the section underneath that in section 2E, where it states attestation that workers' compensation insurance and commercial liability insurance to cover employees and clients has been obtained. There has been numerous comments from the public that many of the guides and spotters are 1099 contract employees, that sometimes this may apply, sometimes it won't apply. What we kind of want to just make sure, and whether it states this in the rule or not, that all the state and federal laws regarding insurance are followed. So if we're just throwing it out there that if that needs to be changed, we're okay with that. No problem discussing and changing that as well. And those are my updates.
Okay, is there any RAC questions?
I don't know if this has been brought up in other RACs, but I was looking at prohibited activities, and it said something about the outfitter, guide, or spotter has to report the division any violations within 20 days. 20 days seemed like quite a while to me. Like how with the, I don't know, is that like a standard language in other?
And I don't have a good answer for you there. That was written by our attorney in there, and I think we're just like, that seems like a pretty good time frame to get you off the mountain, make sure everything that if something needs to be reported can. So it's a good question. I don't know where the 20 came from.
Yeah.
So
It just seemed like if it was 20 days, if they came with you at like 19 days and the law enforcement needed to go investigate what happened.
Yeah.
There could be an issue there. I don't know.
Normally on misdemeanor violations, you have 2 years to investigate it. So this is, so the 20 days is just kind of a suggested, I don't want to interpret it, I didn't write that in there. That was done by the attorneys.
So that didn't come from the bill that was passed on it?
No.
Attorneys? Okay. Any other questions? Okay, we'll go ahead and move to public questions. Is there any questions from the public?
I have.
Go ahead. Stand up to the mic, state your name. And
My name is Rusty Farnsworth. I'm an outfitter here in the basin. One thing that it doesn't really mention in, what I was reading through about the changes is it doesn't talk about outfitters who, like, for example, if I wanted to use all my user days on the National Forest just specifically to pack campers in, I would have nothing to do with hunting. You guys will still oversee those type of outfitters as well?
So this rule is specifically for hunting of protected wildlife. So if you are not participating in this activity, then it doesn't apply.
So who oversees those outfitters though? Because they used to have to obtain their professional license from DWR as well. Will they still have to?
Is the intent to eventually hunt big game?
No, guys. I mean, there's outfitters who do rafting trips. There's outfitters who do just specifically camping and things like that.
Yeah.
And so that's what my question is. Will they be overseen by DWR or you guys?
If they previously were under DWR for that, that's where that stays. It didn't come over to DNR. It was specifically for hunting that came over to
The
DNR.
DNR is specifically for hunting. Okay, and then
isn't it hunting and fishing? Because I think
Correct.
in
Sorry.
the other one, they said fishing was also as well.
It is, yes.
so
Hunting and
anything
fishing.
to do with wildlife.
Any regulated activity under DNR for protected wildlife would fall under this.
Okay, and then one other thing that I just wanted to clarify, and I can bring this up more in the comments section, but I talked to Wade. I can't remember what his last name is. Hovinga, yeah. And
Let's call him Hovinga, just so he'll laugh right now.
Under the guide and spotter rule, I just want to clarify this. So all my hunts are backcountry hunts with horses. And there's times that I will hire people just to help with horses or just to cook in a camp. And according to Wade, those people would have to be licensed as a guide or spotter. And I would, on an elk hunt, I'd be limited to only have 2 people for that. in that case. And so is that correct? Because he told me that was the case. You know, if there's been a change there, or is that still the case?
So what I will do is I have the bill that was passed by the legislature here, and I can read the definitions that were given by the legislature. A spotter means an individual compensated by a guide or outfitter to locate or monitor the location of protected wildlife on public land. So if one of your people does that, they have to be a spotter, right? The guide, it means an individual who offers or provides guide services on public lands for compensation. Guide services is also defined as means to guide, lead, or assist an individual in hunting protected wildlife. So that's the definitions that we have at the moment for guides and spotters under the bill. In the rule, we add spotting to a definition, means locating or monitoring the location of protected wildlife, which spotting and spotter it's the same definition. So if you're in the people that you're taking up on the mountain are engaged in those activities, then they must register, yes.
Okay. And then another question when it comes to like the insurance that you mentioned earlier. So, you know, I've watched some of the other RACs. I'm still not sure I totally understand, but you know, like with the federal agencies like the Forest Service, we have to show proof of insurance to even get the permit. But we're going to have to show all that to the division as well, or will it just be to the forest in the future?
If what we, as it stays right now, you will have to state that you either have workman's compensation insurance and commercial liability insurance to cover employees and clients. You just have to state that you have it, like click a button. If the RAC or the board eventually adjusts that, it will adjust in the future.
Okay.
So
that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public questions? Okay, we'll go ahead and move to the electronic comments.
For this agenda item, we had one comment which strongly agreed with the recommendation. The commenter felt that the rule change would give the average hunter a better chance. And that's it.
Okay, we will go ahead and move to the public comments, and I think we have one for that. Okay, Rusty Farnsworth, you want to come on back up?
All right, so just a couple things that I wanted to bring up with this, you know, new spotter and guide rule, just so you guys can understand the situation this puts me in, where all my hunts are backcountry hunts. You know, there's times we'll have families that'll hire us to take them in, for example, like on a youth elk hunt or something like that. And for every 4 animals I have on the mountain, I will hire a wrangler to help with the animals for safety reasons. Well, under this new law, you know, they'd be help leading them up the mountain on this hunt, and it would be illegal for me to have more than one person help on that. And so, you know, that's definitely is an issue that'll affect me, not only from a safety standpoint, but you know, I think that's something you guys really need to consider. You know, it seems like outfitters are being sought out on this deal, and I don't really know why. You know, I can be up there on the mountain with a family and only have 2 people, while there can be a camp right next to me and they could have 30 people helping them, and it's perfectly legal. But at the same time, as soon as that animal's down, I can hire as many people as I want to come and help extract that animal. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Let's see, I'm trying to get my thoughts all together here. I've been thinking a lot about this, but you know, I think I know where this is coming from. You know, we got governor's tags and high-end tags where people pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to hunt these animals. And you know, I want you to think about, if you took guides and outfitters out of that scenario, how much do you think those conservation tags would bring? If those people had to do this on their own, the money that goes back into wildlife is going to be a lot less. And also, when it comes to spotters and people who help on these hunts, a lot of time it's young people that we want to get into the outdoors. You know, we can pay them a daily rate to come and help out on these hunts. And, you know, we're trying to start businesses, be entrepreneurs, and make money, and it's just crippling that. Let me see here. Sorry, I got some notes here. Another thing I have a question about is the fees. You know, my professional license fee used to be $50 every 2 years. Now it's $500 a year for me and $250 for every guide I have. Some of my guides have said, you know, don't really want to guide for you now unless you pay my fee. So for example, if I had 4 of my guides do that, you know, I could be paying upwards of $2,000 a year just for those licenses to be able to operate. And as I look up the fee schedule on Doppel, I only seen one other professional license fee that's $500. And other than that, there's not even another professional license fee that even touches what the guide's fee would be. I just think it's overkill. You know, I get that there's some big commercial outfitting businesses in Utah, but most outfitters in Utah are guys who work multiple jobs, trying to get by, just trying to feed their families, and I feel like it's crippling them. Another thing.
You're actually out of time.
Okay.
So you'll get 3 minutes, but if you want to have a closing statement, go ahead and finish what you're trying to say there.
I just think you should really consider some of those things. I think in a way it's crippling outfitters, and also in a way I think it's hurting the state of Utah on conservation money that they could receive as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Well said. So we'll go ahead. So we have no more public comment cards. We'll go ahead and move to RAC comments on that then. Unless, do you want to address his question on the $500 fee thing, where that came directly from the legislature, right?
Yes.
That was where that came from. Okay.
I will say, as to one of the statements that you did say, that you can have no more than 2 compensated individuals on the mountain. It doesn't necessarily mean you can't have people there who are not compensated. So, but I understand what you're
Can
saying.
I ask a question on that? Sorry. One can of worms I see with that. Oh, yeah, sorry. One can of worms that I see with that. I mean, there's obviously people in the state who don't like outfitters. There's just so many ways around that rule. I mean, the honest guys are going to do it right, but if guys want to compensate guys, they can pay them in cash, yada, yada. I mean, how are you guys going to even go about investigating that? I just think it's a law that is unenforceable. And I mean, it'd be very hard to enforce. Am I not right? And so I think that, you know, that's something you guys need to consider and I just think that there's people that might see me on the mountain who doesn't like an outfitter and say, oh, he's got these people. And then, you know, they turn me in and I'm getting investigated, even though some of those people aren't compensated.
Sure.
And I think it'd just be endless investigations on things that don't even need to be investigated.
And you make great points.
Yeah.
In the bill, it's the compensation, just so everybody's on the same page. Compensation means anything of economic value in excess of $100 is paid, loaned, granted, given, donated, transferred, guide. So anything more than $100, right? That's what compensation means. If a conservation officer comes up to your camp or anything like that, and says, "Hey, I just need to check permits, stuff like that," they will need to see a guide COR that the person has to have on them that's affiliated with you, or a spotter, and if they have those 2 things, and you're stating, "I'm not compensating anybody else," that's the circumstances that we're in, and investigating that is 100% on us. We have to, if you're trying to get around us, we have to figure out a way to do that. That is our job. So you're right that it will be difficult, but that's what we do. So
I kind of have a question along the fees. How do the other states around us stack up? Yeah, I don't know what I paid for my engineering license, but it probably isn't as much as that either.
I couldn't tell you.
I'm not sure either.
Okay.
I think engineering like about $100. In Oregon, I pay close to $200. But engineering, I guess.
So Rusty's comments raised a few questions for me too. So is the only being able to have one guide or spotter, is that in the law or is that a rule?
It's in the law.
Okay. So that'd have to be changed legislatively. I can see Rusty's point in an outfitter sometimes is simply doing that, is packing in gear, basically. And that does take, we've all probably packed. It's a little bit, it can be kind of hard work. So I see the point on that. I think the intent of the legislation was, and over the years we've discussed this, is having multiple paid spotters surrounding an animal and waiting basically until the hunter gets there. And that's not hunting, that's killing. And so that was, I think, what the law intended to get around or do away with. But I think in the future, but it won't be addressed here, and it won't really be addressed. The Wildlife Board could recommend some changes, go back to legislation. And I would probably recommend you guys get with your representative, Scott Chu, Ron Winterton. Those guys point out the specifics in the bill that are harmful and don't make sense, and ask them to go back and change it. Casey Snyder's the one that ran this bill. He's a hard dude to get around. But so you'll have to figure that deal out. But I would recommend you go to legislatures and change that. But I think those are valid points.
And for clarification, I did just get a text from one of my officers. Nevada is just over $2,000 for a guide license.
And I do agree. These fees are kind of getting a little bit crazy. So technically right now, I'm not eligible to serve on the RAC, even though as of May 7th, because I don't have my combination license. That's part of this new law too. So I got to go buy my combination license to serve on the RAC.
We can get Tori here to talk to you about that.
It's about as bad as fishing, though.
It wouldn't be the first time. So yeah, I mean, kind of some ridiculous, kind of chintzy stuff, but that Casey's kind of known for that.
I guess just a comment, I guess, about the, wrangler and cook. It would be the titles, right? Those would be the terms. Like, I think it would be very helpful to have that definition that's, excluded, I guess, from those numbers. But I don't know if we can necessarily.
And it is part of the bill.
Right.
And that's where we're kind of handcuffed a little bit.
Right.
They will want your wranglers and cooks registered if you're going to define them separately.
Well, and that's what Wade told me is that the cook. Oh, sorry. That's what Wade told me is that the cook and the spotter would have to buy their license to do that, even if they don't participate in the hunt at all. They're just tending stock or cooking in camp. They would have to buy a spotter or guide license.
Yeah, I don't know where it ends. I think I would, like I say, I would pursue it legislatively, but I can see where the individual that ran this bill, he would then want the cooks defined and registered and a fee, the wranglers defined and registered and a fee. I think, yeah, it's a little out of control.
And one thing I would say, I know that didn't come from the division. I know that came legislatively, so I don't have any buff with the division. Thank you.
No, I think you give great points there, Rusty. I think this bill was run without talking to outfitters, was ran without talking, and for sure it was. It was also ran without coming through the racks to get some comment on it. And so I think they overlooked people like you that don't employ 30 people to cover 5 different units. And I think that's really what this whole thing's about. Tied to one picture with 20 spotters in a picture behind one animal. And I think that's where it's from. And so I think sometimes that's where legislatively we've been kind of getting hosed, the sportsmen's as whatnot, bills getting run down our throats that we can't do a whole lot about. So So yeah, I think you bring up some really good points on that. Really appreciate you coming and doing that. You're the only outfitter that's even stepped up here. I haven't heard from any other outfitters as far as emails or anything. Some of the other units apparently have, or the other racks have, but I never got an email from any of them. So we appreciate you coming. So is there any other comments? Just so everybody's aware, there were a couple of motions made on these ones from the different racks. The Northern rack did one where they brought in, said you must have the federal permits to operate on public lands. That was one motion. And there was also a motion about 3.2E removal in it as well, I believe, too. So just to note that was what came up in the other racks.
That did spur one thought I had. I know of at least one outfitter that has like special direct permission to cross tribal land, for example. I don't know if that's something that's in there, but in our situation, we do have some areas that it would definitely be a lot easier to access if you could get that access permit, whatever it might be. And apparently there's a way to do that with the Ute tribe that.
Yeah, last night in the Southeast region, they said they had an agreement with the tribe to access this south end of the roadless area. That you just had to get an access permit. So apparently they've worked out a deal, is what I've been told.
And you have to have a valid license, a hunting license, or a combination.
Okay. And Tori said they had to have a valid hunting or conservation license to go through there as well too. So
A Utah combination.
a Utah one. Okay.
Yeah.
So and that was I kind of dug into it a little more, and that one you will go through the business committee at the tribe for that. It's not through like energy and minerals. It goes through the business committee, and they said they were going to try to guarantee approval in like 21 days, something like that. So
That's correct.
So there was some progress made on that. So
Yeah, I was just kind of thinking in terms of the outfitters too, and there's probably some, a lot of times those access permits require specific names and vehicles and whatever. So anyways, something I wanted to state.
was 3.2 was the insurance one, wasn't it? The 1099 and that end one wasn't it?
3.2E.
3.2E.
Yeah, 3.2,
It was
3.2D
to remove it was
is the federal permits, and 3.2E
That's
is
what
the insurance.
the motion was. The other one was you must have federal permits to operate on public lands. Was the actual wording that they used in the southern or the northern. I think.
Wording here for it. Federal permits. So I'll move to make a motion.
We're ready. If we're ready for a motion,
It sounds like with Rusty's concerns, that's something that's legislative, right? Okay. So I move to approve what is it called here?
it is called
The Outfitters Guides and Spotters Rule Amendments, with a couple amendments to that. To not require federal permits in the application material for the state guiding license, but to require application permits to be obtained from the relevant land management agencies, and that guides carry a copy of the federal permit while operating in the field.
Okay.
And then removing the
3.2.
3.2E portion.
Okay, we have a motion from Natasha, and the motion is to accept as presented, but to not require federal permits in the application materials for state guiding licenses, but to require applicable permits to be obtained from the relevant land management agency, and that guides carry a copy of the federal permit while operating in the field, and the removal of 3.2E. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
We have a second from Richie. We'll go ahead and take a vote by raise of hands. That passes unanimously. Okay, And thanks, Rusty, for coming in on that and bringing that comment. And that was, you're the first guy that I'd seen in any of the racks that have brought up your concerns. And so they're very valid concerns. And I see exactly why you have issues with it. So
I appreciate that too. That's a good comment.
okay, we will go ahead and move to agenda item number 8, CWMUs with public land variance requests with Chad Wilson.
Yeah, I don't really have any clarification, so if we want to jump into questions.
Does anybody need a clarification or anything? Or? Okay, we'll just go ahead and go to questions from the RAC.
I know we can draw. It's probably pretty early for Chad to be speaking at this point, but no questions.
A little bit early. Wasn't there some concerns on some of these renewals in some of the other acts? Yeah, there's been some discussion on them. Mostly it seems like it's centered around the corner crossing stuff. That was just passed in March. So as a division, we haven't had a chance to look how to apply that to the CWMU rule and how we've been handling things.
Which one was the one that had the land that could potentially be corner crossed?
More than one of them does, but the TL bar is the one that in 2 of the racks, it's been recommended to not approve that one. It doesn't have trade lands. So the other ones have trade lands. So they have corner crossing, but there's also trade lands there. So they haven't come into question as much as that one.
Can you comment on what Prohibition Springs put into what they put up to allow to get the public land in there?
Yeah, so they are opening up private lands at a ratio of 2 to 1, so 2 private lands for every public acre. And then they wanted to allow for hunting of all species, not just big game. So if we do trade lands through the CWMU program, then it's big game is accessible on those trade lands. So we would house that. We'd call it trade land still, but we'd house it in walk-in access and have them not be compensated. That way the public would be able to hunt all of the land for all of the purposes, not just big game.
Didn't they say even for upland game as well too? I thought I heard a comment.
Yeah.
Someone said it was pretty good upland game
Yeah,
hunting in there as well.
yeah, it's good upland game hunting, so it'd be open for that too.
And this was only for pronghorn on the Prohibition Springs, right? It was just a pronghorn.
Yeah, pronghorn only CWMU.
Any other rack questions?
So at one of the other racks, they said that it's for all big game. So they're only taking pronghorn, but they open up their private land for all big game, right?
Yes. Yeah. That was a rule change to the CWMU rule last year. So any trade lands are now mandatory to be open for all big game hunting.
Yeah, that was just a surprise to me. I didn't know about, so I was make sure everyone else knew about that as well.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move to public questions. Any questions from the public on this agenda item? Okay, we'll go ahead and move to electronic comments.
For this agenda item, we had one electronic comment which strongly disagreed with the recommendation, and the commenter felt that the public hunters wouldn't benefit from this recommendation, and that's the reason for disagreeing.
Okay, do we have any public comment cards on this one? Okay, we'll go ahead and move to RAC comments on it. I know it was brought up that in several of the racks that some of the people didn't feel like since the corner crossing case, the case had come about, that we should try to look at all CWMUs for this where there's corner crossing as well. And I mean, that's a large can of worms there, but I mean, I definitely see where some of this could be beneficial on some of these ones as well. I don't know if I have on these ones in particular, if it's good or bad, because the problem that some people think on CWMUs is the public land is totally blocked off, but that's not the case. It's only blocked off for that species. You just can't hunt that species, but you can still hunt upland game. If it was only for elk, you could still hunt deer, those things. And so I think people get caught up and forget about that part of it as well. So
I guess I know last night there was a lot of comment about that corner crossing, and I just got an email, I think a half hour ago, that said that ruling might get taken to the Supreme Court. So kind of hard to do anything until that's like dialed down. Also, I would think the division wouldn't want to move on that, making changes until they hear the final say. But it's a potentially great opportunity for the public land hunter.
Sorry, I'm trying to figure out what the corner crossing, kind of the route behind that. Are they saying that because the corner crossing could be available, that now some public lands that weren't accessible could be accessible, and those should be removed from the CWMU? Is that kind of the direction?
yeah, if you look at the map on the TL bar, it actually shows that one in the middle that they want to include. You could corner cross on that one. And so I think that's kind of the reasoning behind it.
Okay, thanks.
Is there any other RAC comments?
And I guess I'm looking at like that one, the reason, I mean, that's probably a sanctuary in some ways, but in another thing that public is forgetting, I guess, is that they are offering permits to hunt there too, and they're promoting that wildlife. So I think it's a double-edged sword.
I think with the TL bar, because they didn't have any trade lands, but they went ahead and did a 50-50 split versus 60-40 on the pronghorn tags, right?
Yeah, and it's a low number of tags. It's just been one public and one private every year, but potentially we can do those over a long period of time. So when it got to 10, then there wouldn't be a public tag that year. So it'd be a 6-4 over 10 total tags. And they've just never, because of this, they've never pursued that. So it just stays a true 50-50 split instead of going to 60-40.
What unit is that for pronghorn?
It's in Box Elder. It's on the Nevada border.
How many tags do they give in that unit? Just in that one, do you know?
I don't, not off the top of my head. I don't think it's very many. There's not a ton of pronghorn out there.
Maybe that's a Dax question. I was just curious on how many people would be missing out on that as far as an opportunity if there was pronghorn in that one piece of for corner crossing. I'm just curious on that.
Yeah.
Any other RAC comments? And if anybody has an idea, wants to make a motion to break them up by not approving one and then approving the others, I mean, we can do it however as well. I think in one of the regions they did one motion was made to not approve the TL bar, and then they approved, I think, the other ones, but I can't remember exactly.
I'd go ahead and make the motion to accept the 2025 Cooperative Wildlife Management Units with public land renewals as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. by Eric Majors to accept the Cooperative Wildlife Management Unit public land renewals as presented. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
And that was seconded by Natasha. We'll go ahead and have a vote by raise of hands. That passes unanimously. Okay. We will move on to item number 9. Changes to the WMA exemptions from license requirements by Chelsea Duke. Chelsea is online with us there. Hello, Chelsea.
Hi, everybody.
Does anybody need a refresher on anything on this? Did you have you had some updates, right, Chelsea?
I'd love to, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Great. So I just wanted to address a few points that came up during the public comment that I wanted to address in addition to my video. So first, House Bill 309 is a bill that was passed by the Utah legislature during the 2025 session, and that went into effect on May 7th. The requirement to hold a valid hunting, fishing, or combination license was put into state law and is not a rule that was implemented by the Wildlife Board. The DWR and the Wildlife Board are now charged with implementing and upholding this new law. Therefore, this rule proposal before you is meant to define terms and make some additional exemptions to the requirement as permitted by law. Second, I want to clarify the authority of the Wildlife Board in relation to this new legislation. The bill states that the Wildlife Board may not exempt individuals on the basis that those individuals do not engage in hunting, trapping, or fishing within a wildlife management area. Therefore, the scope of the board's authority is limited to the following 2 items. The bill specifically outlines the Wildlife Board's rulemaking authority, stating that the Wildlife Board may make rules to define purposes of 1, what is meant to be expressly exempt, and then 2, what constitutes an educational program or education or visitor center. So those are the only 2 items that the board has the authority to add on to this law. Additionally, I will also say that this law and rule apply to counties of Class 1 and Class 2, and that includes Salt Lake County, Utah, Weber, and Davis. And that's a total of 30 wildlife management areas that are in the northern and central region.
Okay, is there any RAC questions on this one for Chelsea?
Hi, Chelsea. This is Natasha Haddon. I just wanted to clarify. So we do have the authority to try to add an exemption then? Is that the right understanding?
Correct. You can make a motion to add exemptions, but the exemption cannot be because individuals are not engaged in hunting, trapping, or fishing.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
I think one of the motions that came out was that federal land management employees, while conducting their official duties, will be exempt, was one of the motions that was actually made. Yes. So, okay. Any other questions from the RAC? We'll go ahead and move to public questions then. Each quiet room. Okay, any public comments? Or we'll go ahead and go to the electronic comments. Sorry.
For this agenda item, we had no electronic comments.
Okay, we don't have any public comment cards. I'd give someone a minute if they wanted to make one to bring it up. Okay, we'll go ahead and move to the RAC comments. I think the issues that would come up in some of the other ones was in Central that you have some mountain bikers that go into here and have a mountain bike race, that a trail that goes through there. And that was some of the ones that was brought up, that they didn't feel that it was fair in some cases because they do a lot of work on those WMAs. But it was also brought up that those WMAs are made for wildlife management areas, not for mountain biking trails. And I see the reasoning behind this. I think there could be, my personal opinion is I think there could be some, I wish there was something there to help a permit or something for that people didn't have to necessarily buy hunting permit, but I understand that we get federal dollars for hunting permits as well too. And so that was another reasoning behind it. And so that everybody who enjoys these WMAs can actually help towards the management of it. it's kind of a catch-22 there because I can see both sides of it. And I know in those WMAs out there around the Wasatch Front, there's a lot of bird watchers and people that come specifically just for pictures and things like that as well that probably never buy a permit. You probably have a lot of out-of-staters and they wouldn't want to buy a permit. But so I don't know the answer to it, but I see the heartburn with that one as well too. So.
Has there been discussion of having almost like a non-consumptive type permit or a WMA permit?
Yeah, so the law as written does not allow the division to have any sort of non-consumptive license. So the way that the law is written, it says explicitly it must be a hunting, fishing, or combination license.
Okay. That's making sense to me now. Thank you.
Is there any exemptions for like doing service on the WMAs? So say you had a project and people came out to help out, but they didn't have a license. Is there an exemption for that?
So part of the rulemaking authority that the division has, or the board has, that is before you, is we have proposed an exemption in rule that would state that division employees, volunteers, contractors, and invitees would be exempt while in the course of their official duties.
Okay.
So I have a question for you. If the mountain bikers have a fishing license, are they free to go on to those lands?
Yes, they are. It does not mean that you have to be engaged in that activity. It just means you have to have a license in order to access the wildlife management area. Additionally, I will say for the mountain biking community, and this was brought up in the Central Region RAC, the division does in some instances issue special use permits to local high school groups that are engaged in mountain biking. And so they are not required to hold a valid hunting, fishing, or combination license, one, because they're under 18, but coaches additionally are not because they're covered under the contract. And they do a lot of work, and that's their payment for the division, is that they come and do service projects on the wildlife management area.
Any other comments?
I guess this is another rule that was brought by the legislature. I see that kind of both ways for sure, because these lands are for hunting wildlife, for the wildlife, and so we should, the public should be aware that it takes money to have this land and use it. So, but kind of, it's another thing where we're paying more money for more fees, which just kind of goes.
I like that they at least put fishing licenses, because in order to get a hunt license, you'd have to go through hunter safety. And so there's a lot of people that wouldn't, but in hunter safety, they would learn that you get Dingle Johnson, Pittman Robertson money from licenses sales, but also from the equipment that they use as well. And so that's kind of where the benefit can come back onto it that they don't realize. It's kind of like a duck stamp. There's a lot of people that'll buy a duck stamp and don't even hunt. They just collect them, and that money comes back to waterfowl. And so it's almost like the same thing. So it'd almost be nice if they bought like there was a duck stamp or a bird watching stamp that could equal something for Pittman Roberts, or it'd be Pittman Robertson money for that one, because Dingle Johnson's for fishing. But anyways, it would almost be nice to have like a bird watching stamp or something. I don't know. So
Was there any discussion of that during the legislative session? Because it does limit people that are bird watching that are coming from out of state. They would have to probably buy an out of state fishing license to go bird watching on the units.
That is correct. So there's been lots of discussion. This has been a bill that has been introduced multiple times over the last several years. And one of the main points here is that any additional license type, whether it's a WMA pass or a non-consumptive pass, that does not get this federal match. And so it doesn't stretch the dollar as far.
wonder if Utah implemented a duck stamp of their own that would count. You could almost do a competition just like the national duck stamp, but just a thought. Any other comments? I will entertain a motion, I guess.
So I'll make a motion to accept the changes to the WMA exemptions from license requirements with the caveat to add an exemption to hunting or fishing license requirements for federal land management employees while conducting their official duties.
Okay, we have a motion by Natasha to accept as presented, but to accept as presented the, which one was it? The WMA exemption from license requirement with the exemption that to hunting and fishing license requirements for federal land management employees while conducting their official duties. Okay, do I have a second?
I will second that motion.
Okay, I have a second from Rebecca, right? I knew it. My mind went blank there. Sorry. Okay, do we have? We'll go ahead and vote. Raise the hands. Okay, that passes unanimously.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Chelsea. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 10, sage grouse translocation. Do you have any updates or anything you want to update us on?
Nothing new, just, can you
I
hear
forgot to
me?
introduce you as Heather Talley, given this presentation. So.
Thank you. Yeah, nothing new, just if you want to have any clarifications or questions, we can pull up maps or answer anything additional you might have.
Need some questions. Get Brian up behind the mic.
I have a question.
Yeah.
As far as the proposed areas where they'll be taken and then, translocated to.
Sure.
Are those, is it like PHMA to PHMA, or is there ever a scenario where it's like, GHMA to PHMA?
Everything that we're doing, we're following the SGMA boundaries, which in this case are aligned with PHMA as well. So for anybody that's watching that's unsure of what that means, sage grouse management areas are the priority areas for sage grouse outlined in our statewide Division of Wildlife and DNR statewide plan. But PHMA refers to priority habitat management area, GHMA refers to general habitat management area, and those are outlined in the current BLM sage grouse plan, which is going to be updated soon, and so they might have some changes, but we don't have any drastic changes coming for our SGMAs. We've met with some local working groups, and we're going to tweak a couple of things here and there to account for some newer information that's come along, but everything that we're doing right now is SGMA to SGMA.
Thank you.
If this one's successful, these ones, and I guess the question might be I have two-part. If these are successful, will we do more, try to look for more areas for translocation?
Yeah, so we want to spend at least a few years putting grouse in the same place to ensure successful reinforcements or augmentations to populations. And we're always looking at new opportunities to increase distribution. It just so happens that these release sites at Tabby Mountain, Browns Park, and in the Maitogi Tidwell Slopes all have great habitat restoration where sage grouse were more heavily dense in those areas. And now they're just not distributing out to those places as much just because of their high fidelity to lekking, brood rearing, and nesting sites. So if more opportunities arise, we'll definitely look into doing more translocations for sure.
How many years or how long will it take till we say, oh, hey, this was successful? I mean, I'm just curious on is there a time? Is there?
Some guidelines recommend 2 to 3 years, but if Brian has different ideas, we can definitely let him speak as well. But that's what we were hoping for.
In your video, you were talking about doing this for genetic diversity. Are you studying that at all and looking at how this increases genetic diversity?
Unfortunately for me, maybe I misspoke or maybe I'm misremembering my own video. I thought that I was implying that we were doing this mostly for the distribution of grouse into those new habitat restoration areas. In the locations that we are taking grouse from and putting grouse to, in this instance, where we have seen the current populations of grouse, we're already at a good number of heterozygosity. So we're not overly concerned about genetics for this purposes of this translocation, but just that further distribution to grow the core.
Is there any thoughts of having any more studies on these birds? Like, I know there was a study back, it was like 20 years ago, and I think it was in Strawberry where they talked about that they thought there was issues with birds being translocated. They didn't have the same sound, and they thought it might throw it off. I swear I recall one like that a long time ago at the Wildlife Society.
Yeah, I want to say that that was a Washington study, that maybe that they've become so isolated that in Washington, the sage grouse have developed a more distinct sound for their booming while they strut. But I don't think that with our populations in Utah, we're not necessarily so worried about the sounds of the lekking. And that kind of leads to a point of we are taking from our first initial translocations that we're taking from Blue Diamond Mountain to Tabby Mountain. Those are all going to be juvenile males. So that's going to give them really a better chance to increase their own biological fitness that they may not have had otherwise at the source site, just because 10% or fewer of males breed with over 90% of females at a lek. So they might actually be able to have a chance to copulate where they wouldn't otherwise. But
any other RAC questions? Okay, any questions from the public? Okay, we don't have, or go ahead, are there any electronic comments?
For this agenda item, there is no electronic comments. No.
Okay, and we don't have any public comments. So we'll just move on to the RAC comments. I find this really, this is great. I think it's a good thing because we can move birds around and possibly some of these, I can't remember if we can hunt the Tabby Mountain population. I don't know if they can, but I mean, that would be wonderful if we could get more birds in other places where we could hunt. So I think this is a great thing. And I also think for the overall sage grouse population, just the whole, them being as potentially listed species, that this is a good thing where we can get back, because I know we're seeing them fall back on a lot of the range. So I think this is a great thing.
I agree with you, and I might be partial to sage grouse, but I would like to make a motion to accept the sage grouse translocation as presented.
Second.
It was a motion by Natasha to accept as presented, and Jordan seconded it. So do we have, we'll just do a vote by hands again. All those in favor? Okay, that passes unanimously. We will move on to Heather's second one, the possession and release of pen-reared game birds rule amendment. Is any update to that?
no update. All the RACs have approved as presented. So just if you guys have any questions, we can go over any of the intricacies of that rule.
Okay, RAC questions. All right, we'll move on to any public questions. It's really a one-person public, JC. Okay, any electronic comments?
No electronic comments for this agenda item.
Okay, we will, then I don't see any public comment cards, so we'll go ahead and move on to the RAC comments. I know it had come up in other places about the testing, the testing for the disease on the birds. We're Was that something, have you seen a lot of disease in pen-raised birds that you've had to shut people down from doing releases, or has that been an issue?
There's always a concern because anytime you have an artificial congregation of animals, the disease is going to spread more easily and rapidly. So we have seen mycoplasma in some domestic flocks in the past. They have had to be depopulated. And that's why we're now recommending to move forward with some division testing that we can just randomly sample from different CHAs or growers throughout the state and kind of gauge some prevalence. So that's I feel like a good compromise that we landed on, so that if we find that this is more prevalent than previously thought by some of our constituents, that we could revisit mandating this.
Any more RAC comments? Entertain a motion then, I guess. Somebody beside Natasha.
I'll make a motion that we approve it as presented.
Thanks, Jake. Jake made a motion to approve as presented the possession release of Penrod Game Bird Rule Amendment. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, she's got it.
Okay, seconded by Rebecca. Okay, we'll just go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor? Okay, that passes unanimously. We will now turn it over to Dallin. So
at this time, this is the last RAC meeting of this cycle. We have a few outgoing RAC members that we will be honoring in the fall. So we'll be contacting you and asking you to come back in the fall where we can honor you and thank you for your service. At this time, Grizz has been our chair for the past 2 years, and he would like a chance to possibly vote for once instead of just running the meetings. And so we have two options. We need to elect a chair, which we can do tonight at this meeting, or since we're missing several RAC members, we can delay it to the August meeting and do it there.
I'll go to the board meeting in June.
Yes.
Since I did this one, I can go to that board meeting. That's not a problem.
Well, that's good because we were expecting that from you. Huh? No.
Well, I didn't want anybody that wanted to step up be afraid because they thought they'd have to go to that board meeting. So.
Yeah. So those are our two options, and it's kind of up to the RAC how we want to proceed from this point. And that's the direction I've been given by Miles. So we can vote on a new chair tonight, or we can delay it to the first RAC meeting in August and then select a new chair.
Would there be a way that we could maybe nominate people and then they could talk to them to be like, would you accept this nomination and then vote?
I think so, if that's something that you would like to do.
Or what do you guys think?
That seems like a good idea. Just find out who's willing, and able, I guess. 'Cause commitment to go out and is committed to make it to the board meeting. So.
I would actually be the vice chair if somebody wanted, so I could help go to the board meetings. If they can't make it, I'd be more than willing to be the vice chair to help out as well too. So it's not really that hard. I mean, you just got to go to the board and talk, and they're getting 4 new board members, and maybe they're not as scary as these ones. So.
So maybe we could email Miles our nominations, and Miles could talk to the people if they would accept it, and then in August vote for chair and vice chair.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. That would give us an opportunity to reach out and see if that person would be willing to do the job. So if that's how you'd like to proceed, that's the way we will go.
Who are we losing? Who's dropping off this time?
That's the same.
So there will be 3, I think.
I think there was 2. We need a new elected official.
That's right. That's right.
And
Red Horse
then,
is off.
and I think Becca was done.
Yes, I've done my 8 years.
Yes,
So I think that was the two that and
and Richie.
Richie, that's right.
Yep, so you don't have to buy that fishing license after all.
Richie's done
Richie, I
it.
think you're actually exempt anyway, so the agricultural reps are exempt from the fishing license, hunting and fishing license, I'm pretty sure. But he was good either way.
We'll have people on board, but yeah, so those are the three we're losing. We're losing Rebecca, Brad Horrickson, and Richie. And yeah, we'll in August we'll have you back and tell you thank you. So.
No, I think that's a good plan.
Okay, that's how we'll go about it then. So,
Okay. Okay, the only thing left is to motion to adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
I'll
Rebecca
second.
made a motion to adjourn, and you want to be a second, Jake?
Yep.
Okay, Jake seconded. Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand, I reckon. Adjourn.